All right, so we're moving into week 5. It's hard to believe we're already into week 5. It's flying by. This accelerated 7-week course will be over very soon. I have to say I'm gonna miss reading your all's participation assignments. It seems that you're really grasping the material and you're very thoughtful in your responses, and it's just, I am blown away with the level of participation that I'm getting from you guys. So keep up the good work. This week we're really focusing in on forensic interviewing and what that looks like. Did I just skip might have skipped something. Hold on. I did. I knew I did. Okay. So, as you saw last week, it's best practice always to conduct these forensic interviews regarding physical and sexual abuse matters at a Children's Advocacy Center, and that's what that CAC is in the PowerPoint, Children's Advocacy Center, anytime it's possible. Now, it's not always going to be possible if you live in a more rural area, so it's always good to be on the know about what areas offer forensic interviewing at a center such as that. Being in Northern Kentucky, it's great. There are so many resources here in Northern Kentucky. We have a Children's Advocacy Center, which is great, which I've utilized as a social worker in the field when I worked for the cabinet. Let's see here. So as a social worker for the cabinet, if I received an allegation of abuse, physical or sexual abuse, I'm seeing, a child who has marks on their body that corroborate what the report is telling me. It's still not always best practice for me to go on in and ask the child to tell me their story. We want to reduce the number of times a child has to tell their story. We want to, as social workers, go in and, unless we're specifically trained to do a certain model of forensic interviewing, we want to go in and just assess for safety and ensure safety while we prepare the family for a formal forensic interview at a CAC center, for instance. So it's always important to consider the reduction of the number of times a child has to be interviewed. I know that the judge I worked for many years in Kenton County, it was always the last resort for a child to testify in court because it's re-traumatizing for that child to have to sit on a stand and have to tell their story again when they've already told it to a law enforcement person, when they've told it to a forensic interviewer, or even a social worker, We also want to reduce any potential leading questions. A leading question would be a question like, okay, tell me about when your babysitter, touched you in an inappropriate place on your body. That's a very leading question. It identifies the perpetrator, it identifies the occurrence, and we just want to avoid those kind of conversations. Let me click through here. So we always want to build a rapport in the model of forensic interviewing. All models kind of encompass this form of these phases. We want to build a rapport with our client, and then there's a substantive phase. That's the investigation phase. And then there's closure, and we need to consider the kid's age, their developmental level. We may be talking to a 12-year-old, but they may be operating at, an 8-year-old intellectual level. Just, considering that when we are asking questions and adjusting our questions to kind of assist in the elaborative phase with our open-ended questions. We want to consider cultural ethnic backgrounds, Best practice, like I said, to be trained in a particular model prior to pursuing an interview. Okay? Let me see here. So generally there are two approaches. There's the NICHD approach, which is the more structured narrative interview. And then there's the Child First protocol, the RATAC protocol. Biggest difference is to consider whether or not the instructions are reviewed first, whether to ask for a promise from the child to tell the truth, and whether or not to use drawings, dolls, etc. So the Child First RATAC approach, it was developed in the late 80s. It's not really used much anymore. This is the approach that really utilizes the anatomical dolls and drawings. They follow a very systematic sequence: build your rapport, anatomical identification, like I said with the dolls or the drawings, touch inquiry, abuse scenario, again using those dolls and drawings, and then closure. Instructions are presented as you move through the interview, so that's also kind of an issue because children aren't really prepared for what's to come in their interview. They discourage the promise to tell the truth, and they ask a lot of yes or no questions. And as I said just a minute ago, we want to avoid that situation. We want to always ask open-ended questions and help our clients elaborate. And you can't really help someone elaborate on a situation when the answer is yes or no. So something more like, tell me more about that, is a more useful question. My daughter's in the background sneaking into the pantry, so I'm going to pause this. Hold on. Okay, sorry about that. So the other approach that I wanted to talk with you all about is the NICHD approach, utilized internationally, developed in the 2000s. It does not use the aids of drawings or dolls, and it follows a system of rapport building, transition into episodic memory. That's kind of them telling you about what led to the event, narrative event. Transition into substantive issues. That is, for example, getting into the abuse allegations, really getting into what happened. And then the free recall phase investigates incidents with a variety of prompts. And then closure. Again, it's really important to ask those open-ended questions. It can become difficult with kids. Kids tend to answer questions in yes or no. So we always want to use pairing questions. And an example, again, would be, tell me more about that. Whatever they're talking about, an experience, if they answer yes, okay, tell me more about that then. Or if they answer no, okay, tell me more about that then. Just very simple, right? General best practices: setting should be child-friendly, private, only one interviewer. Now, most of these interviews are, they should all be recorded. That would be best practice. And that's for the purpose, again, to reduce the amount of times that a child has to tell their story. The forensic interviews that I observed as a social worker at the CAC Center here locally in Northern Kentucky, the interviewer would sit down with the child and immediately talk with the child about the fact that this would be a recorded interview. Now, they would say it in terms that were appropriate for the child's age. Sometimes for a younger child, I would observe the interviewer pointing out the cameras. Do you see that thing up in the corner? That's a camera. And it's just so that we can go back and watch this again. And it's recorded. And then also do you see that mirror? There is a social worker and a police officer on the other side of the mirror. They're just here to make sure that you're safe while we're moving through this series of questions together. And that's best practice. We don't want to catch anybody off guard ever, even children. They have a right to know what's going on around them at all times, especially children who've been physically or sexually abused, and question authority figures or grown-ups, right? We want the interview to be done as soon as possible after allegations occur. Again, I can't emphasize this enough. Limit the number of interviews. The interviewer should be supportive and warm, de-emphasize authority. As children, maybe not so much the younger children, but maybe the adolescents might feel uneasy if they feel like you're an authority figure, talking with them, build a rapport, and always ask open-ended questions. Again, one of my go-to follow-up questions is, tell me more about that. Now my other child is up, and that's Finn again. If you want to say hi, you want to say hi, Finn?
Hi.
Here. This is Finn. You are arriving at the end of the lecture, buddy.
I just want food.
He just wants food. It's bedtime, so it's the ideal time for snacks. So anyway, don't forget your weekly participation activity. I've already gotten a couple emails about your special population analysis. If you have any questions, reach out to me. Again, I think you guys are doing a great job staying on task. Yes. Now I'm opening a snack. You see what's happening there. But again, reach out if you have any questions. I'm here for you. But you guys seem to be very self-sufficient and cruising through the course. You're doing a great job. And I appreciate all your feedback in your weekly participation activities. And I look forward to reading your special population analysis. It's going to be due this Sunday by 11:59. And again, if you have questions, reach out. Also, just another side note, there are a lot of, sorry, my children are a little distracting tonight. There are also a lot of really cool resources attached this week. The one that I wanted to point out is this handout right here. And it really talks a lot about the use of anatomical dolls and diagrams. This is like an ongoing, should we do it, should we not do it kind of argument. So, give that a read and keep your mind, open and educate yourself before you form an opinion on it, But yeah, like I said, lots of articles linked throughout week 5. Give those a watch. And thank you for your time tonight. Reach out if you have any questions, all right?